Shireen, I'm so excited to talk to you. How are you doing?
I am well. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Well, I love speaking with the author of books I love, and I absolutely loved your new book, Free to Be. Let's talk about you first before we talk about your book. Tell us who you are and what led up to you writing this self-help. I'm going to call it this. Maybe you'll disagree, but I call it a self-help manifesto book.
I I I could go with that, definitely. So a little bit about me. I am by profession, I am a media executive and a entrepreneur. I have my background is in film and television, and I am also an entrepreneur and a marketer by nature. So I've also created a few different companies. And in 2013, I went through at the end of 2013, I went through a major breakup with my partner of 13 years, and we had been dear friends for 9 years prior to that. So 22 years of friendship, relationship, partnership blew up in a 20-minute conversation. Excuse me, a 20-minute conversation. And that really propelled me into, I want to say that it propelled me into soul searching, but prior to that, it propelled me into just that a abyss of nothingness. And it really scared me, not just because I I had no plan B, and I wasn't expecting, I'd never been in that place before. And not only was it frightening to me because I didn't know what was going on, I was also really frightened for my kids, who were 5 and 7 at the time, because my unraveling would do them no good. So I set out to discover what was going on because I knew that this wasn't going to be how the story ends, you know? And people would say, well, on to a new chapter. And I'm like, I don't want a new chapter. I want an entirely new book. So I spent 6 years looking in every nook and cranny. Like, it was really, really important for me to look at everything, and no stones unturned, and a lot of darkness, a lot of weeding, a lot of confusion. And I slowly emerged, and it none of it looked the way I thought it would. Um, but I call it my magical mystery ride. And I mean, it definitely, I mean, there were some really surreal moments, but major, major aha moments. And in reflecting back after 6 years, I realized that if I knew what I was doing at the time, those my 6 year process could really be distilled into 6 weeks. So I consolidated it and wrote the book that I wish I had when I was at that crossroad.
Hmm. Well, reclaiming our souls sounds like a big and unattainable goal in just a 30-minute podcast, but we're certainly going to try. You argue in your book that we have to essentially detox our brains and then our hearts and then our bodies so that we can let our souls shine. But what does our souls have to do with it? I'm listening to your story there and I'm thinking about, you mentioned how a 20-minute conversation and a breakup led to your darkest moments and this journey. I'm thinking about my breakups, and I must say that I've never had a breakup that made me find my soul again. So, what does the soul have to do with anything? And why do you feel as though we should all be working on our own soul work?
It's a fantastic question. So, And I agree with you that other breakups in my life also didn't lead to the same thing. I think the fact that I share children with my ex has something to do with it, and me being very worried. And I was also very much. This was truly the first relationship I had fully committed myself to, and I was all in. So, and like I mentioned, I didn't have a plan B. So that's one reason. But the other reason is that after the breakup, like literally the same night where I didn't sleep a wink, it was very, very clear to me that this wasn't a matter of a broken heart. Everything felt broken. Everything. And what scared me was that I had all the things that everybody strives for. We had the homes, we had the cars, we had the status, we had the titles, we had the friends, we had the money in the account, all of that. And I felt completely empty. And that was what was frightening to me. It wasn't as if, I mean, if I don't know, if I suddenly had become homeless or something, it would make sense. I mean, it would be terrifying, but it would make sense. This didn't make like the amount of spiraling that was happening was disproportionate to the breakup. I mean, in hindsight, it definitely struck me. But what became really clear to me is that the breakup really became a catalyst to something. I was already the slow boiling frog, and that just propelled me into a lot of brokenness, and out of that brokenness came amazing, amazing things. So to go back to your question about the soul, our soul is truly our unique imprint in this universe. No other person, no other being, no leaf on the tree has the same soul that we do. It is uniquely ours. But what ends up happening at a very young age, there's all these studies now that talk about disassociation. Somewhere between age 0 and 5, some say 0 and 7, we disassociate from our two true selves. What is our true selves? It's our inner fire, our inner star. It's the thing that is very unique to us. And you look at a baby, you look at a toddler, and they have it. I mean, that's why we love them so much. I mean, besides the fact that they're cute and cuddly, but it's that magic, it's that innocence, it's that joie de vivre. And somewhere very, very early on, we lose track of it. We disassociate. So instead of living inside out, we begin living outside in. And our self-worth and validation and everything becomes connected to that. And not only that, there's a lot of white noise added to it, right? Because we're constantly bombarded by not just content, but what to do and how to feel worthy. You look at our school system, and I won't rabbit hole, but so much of our education system, especially in the public school system, is about raising kids that are samey. It's very cookie cutter, and yet we give them cookie cutter education, we give them cookie cutter grades, and yet we expect them to thrive and be their individual selves and all the things that we expect from them, but we're truly not giving them the space to do that. That's all I'll say about education. I could go on and on. So, the reclaiming of our soul is truly about clearing the way, excavating up until the time we go back to that inner star. And once we have found it, to live from that place. If you want a visual, think of it as a supernova. It's literally that star bursting. One can argue, well, supernova ultimately ends up in death, as in it ends, but that's how we go anyway. So while we are on this planet, in this life, like, burst away. And why is it important? Because I can't imagine that a soulless life is truly fulfilling for anyone. If you're just going through life checking boxes, at some point there is some sort of come to Jesus, at least for the for the majority of us. So why not actively choose to live from that place? And when you do, I was just saying this in another interview, that I don't know any person who has done this level of soul searching who is a bully, who does not see their accountability and responsibility in this world. All that stuff becomes a byproduct. So you working on you and living life from that place not just benefits you, but your loved ones, your community, and butterfly effect to the globe. How's that for a very long answer to your question?
It's a very comprehensive answer, Shireen, and it's a good one. So thank you for it. I just want to circle back, though, to something you said at the beginning of the conversation about how unbelievably difficult it was to do this soul work, this soul searching. The phrase dark night of the soul comes to my mind personally. But what do you say to listeners who are listening right now and they're thinking to themselves, oh, that sounds too hard, too difficult, too painful? I know for me personally, and we'll talk about this later when we get to the heart detox, but I don't like to feel negative emotions. I don't lean into those. I try to avoid them by running or drinking wine or doing any of my other coping skills. So, what do you say to listeners like me who are like, oh no, it's too painful, it's too hard?
I That's a really good question. And the truth of it is that our emotions are there regardless, and they will come when they will come regardless. So either we suppress them and they squirt in other ways because they have to go somewhere, or we let them move through us. And if you are going to say a provocative word, but if you are addicted to happiness and suppressing your anger, your frustration, your upset, your grief, your loss, your fear, you are truly not allowing your full spectrum of emotions to live. So you are basically managing rather than living fully alive. And when one does that, I frankly find it incredibly exhausting. But it also at some point becomes futile. And I think it's a big reason why I felt so empty. It's because I was managing, and I was managing really well. You know what I mean? Like, my home was fully organized, and I had, again, attained all the accolades and awards and titles. So I was doing it right. I was managing really well. And yet there was this brokenness, there was this emptiness. So anytime you want to attain something different, you have to step into a certain amount of discomfort and just have that trust that something better is on the other side. It's like us being in a jar of worms or something and being like, God, this is really gross, but I don't want to get out because, I'm afraid of what's out there. So if you are quite content with your life, then I would argue then, there is no need for this book. But if there is something, even at a low grade, festering, then it's worth looking at. And I don't know if that answers your question, but I feel like it's a responsibility to yourself.
No, your answer there absolutely answers my question, and it speaks to me on a personal level. This show is about intentional living, living with intentionality. And so if we're just getting through our days with a smile on our face, we're just managing our days. That's the opposite of intentionality, right? That's the opposite of intentional living. And for my listeners who do identify as sustainable minimalists, they already know, right, that we don't do what's easy. We actually lean into the hard. And soul searching is really darn hard. We lean into the hard. We lean into the hard because we know that what's hard, like, often is where we need to go. That little nagging um, thing in the back of our mind, that nagging action we want to do or conquer. Like, when we lean into it, that's where growth occurs. This is an episode like I've never done before. I don't think I've ever even muttered the word soul on this podcast in 360 something episodes. So this is a really different type of show for me personally. And I still wanted to do it though, because even though this isn't a show about spirituality, I do feel as though spirituality and intentionality and becoming our best selves, those concepts are all interconnected. So, what is spirituality to you? What is it in real life? How can you connect that to the ethos of this show, which is sustainable minimalism?
Yeah, a very, very good question. So I think that spirituality, it's really interesting to me because I haven't actually looked at the origins of the word, not spiritual, but spirituality. Because when you look at mental health or mental wellness, nobody calls it mentality. But for some reason, spiritual wellness and spiritual health is considered spirituality. And the issue with that is that it either goes into the realm of the woo woo, which it is not, or it gets confused with religion, and it is not. So it is neither one of those. So whenever we talk about spirituality, I rephrase it as spiritual health and spiritual wellness. And I truly believe that in the next 3 to 5 years, certainly in the next decade, but I'm going to say 3 to 5 years, spiritual wellness is going to have its day the way that mental health is having its day. It used to have a lot of stigma. Like, nobody would say, I'm going to a therapist, or I'm feeling depressed, or I'm going to take a mental health break. But now you have celebrities and athletes and the likes of Prince Harry talking about it. And it's become mainstream. I think spiritual wellness is going to have the same uh, mainstreaming. In that, I think it's really important to think of spiritual wellness the same way that we think about mental health and physical health. So, if we want to have a fit body, more muscles, whatever our motivation is to get to the gym, we get to the gym and we work out on a day in, day out basis or some regular schedule, right? If we're having an issue, we go to a therapist. We don't go to a therapist once every 6 months. We go every week or every other week. It's a regular schedule. When it comes to quote unquote spirituality, it's people the closest I think people come, unless they are true practitioners, we visit it, we window shop. We might go to a retreat, then we go to yoga classes, drink our pressed juices, maybe wear Tibetan jewelry and think we're spiritualing, and that is not it. So what I talk a lot about in the book, and hopefully it resonated with you, is practical spirituality, practical spiritual wellness that can easily be integrated into our day to day. So when you take spiritual wellness out of the realm of the woo woo and make it practical and show how it can be integrated in the here and now. And then here and now, as in like you're doing the dishes, you're vacuuming, you're dropping off the kids. So you don't have to go to a mountaintop to do the work of soul searching. Then I believe it becomes a way for people, the same way that one may declutter their home and organize, and so that it is a space that truly allows them to thrive. All you're doing is doing the same internally. So it very much fits. I mean, what would be the benefit? And I'm sure that you talk about this a great deal. Like, you could sit in the most gorgeous space and still feel chaos inside, right? I mean, the gorgeous space helps, but how you deal with that inner space and that inner conflict is very different, and it matters. So hopefully I've answered your question.
You definitely did. And as you're talking there, I'm thinking about, my own meditation practice. I started meditating maybe 5 years ago because my therapist told me it would be a great way to, recenter, handle my anxiety, etc. And so for 5 years, I've slowly been meditating and slowly learning about myself and getting in touch with my soul, which, to be frank, I didn't even think about ever before meditating over these past 5 years. And I learned something about myself. And it's going to sound really woo woo when I say it. I don't know if it's going to sound woo woo. Maybe some people are like going to say, duh, Stephanie, obviously. But some people are going to think, whoa, that's way too new age for me. But what I learned over 5 years, and I understand and I accept that it's taken me a long time to get here, was that my feelings are my feelings, my thoughts are my thoughts, and neither of those two things are me. There's a third aspect to my being. There's a third voice in me. And that, I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe for me, that is my soul. That is my unique imprint, as you were mentioning before. It took you 6 months to come to these realizations. It's taken me 5 years and counting, and that's the only realization I've had on my meditation journey. But
Well, no, it actually took me 6 years to get it. So you're ahead of me. I just happened to distill it into 6 weeks, and I'm sure then you read the first half of the book, and you were probably nodding to yourself, right?
well, absolutely, and especially, you know, the 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 points you made with regard to the clutter, particularly the mental clutter, right? Like, it's so hard to quiet the noise so that we can hear our souls, hear what it's saying, hear and see and feel its presence in our lives. And so that's what I'd love to spend the rest of our time together doing, Shirin, is talking to you about, your best tips. So I've been doing this for 5-ish years. You said 6-ish years. You got listeners, you can do it for that amount of time if you want. And I certainly suggest it. It's been beneficial. However, you could also just read Shirin's book and take the freeway. So let's talk about detoxing the brain first. A lot of noise in the world. What do you suggest are the best ways that we can shut down the external noise and the internal noise in our brains so that we can, again, lean into the quiet?
Yeah, so those are two distinctly different things, and both of them are very important. So, shutting out the external noise, as in shutting out the information that is coming to us on a daily basis. We are exposed to content 24/7. And the only time we tend to take a break from it, if we actually do, is when we sleep. But there's also so many of us that will get up in the middle of the night, and the very first thing we do is check our phones, which I no longer do, but many of us do. So we don't even have that break. Whether it is through TV, radio, social media, and frankly, even, school, speaking with people, like we have information coming to us all the time. And it is super, super important for us to be able to shut it off. And that is a matter of practice, and it is a matter of, as you say, intention. So making it a point that at some point the computer goes away, the phone goes away, and you deliberately spend time with your family, with loved ones, in nature, because our minds, there's, I I'm obsessed with neuroplasticity and neuroscience, but in every study, you can see how malleable the mind is. So if you are constantly giving it what I call mental junk food, it is going to affect your mind most definitely, like 100, 800%. So it is up to us to become very, very intentional about what content we let in. And some of it, I think we don't even think about. Like, for example, morning news. Morning news is made to be engaging, to be entertaining, and to have as much viewership as possible. So they are going to package the content so that the most amount of people will watch it, and it's often provocative and it's loud and super colorful and all of that. And if that's the first thing you are allowing your brains to be filled with, it is massive. It's overwhelming. And you talk about meditation, it's the absolute opposite of that. So that part is very important for us to do. Finding separation from our thoughts is also intentional, but it's a very different process. And meditation is the easiest way of getting there. Some people can do it through art, which is another form of meditation. Art being, whether it's painting or music or poetry, it's creating a space. It's the ability to step outside of our thinking to a level of awareness or consciousness that is able to see us having our thoughts rather than the thoughts having us. And the reason meditation is important is because there is a method, a roadmap to getting there. I believe that once you get there, once you have that, it's sort of like riding a bike. Once you get balance, it does not leave you. So I am instantly aware when my thoughts are having me rather than I am having my thoughts. And that singular aha moment was the most profound moment of my entire process. Me finding freedom from my thoughts, recognizing that I am not my thoughts, and just because I'm thinking them doesn't make them real, has been the most profound, liberating, and freeing aha moment of my life. So it's crucial to have, and it is available to anyone, anywhere. And frankly, if we have a world full of people who are aware that they are not their thoughts, our world will be entirely different.
That totally 100% resonates with me, Shireen. I have had recently a similar experience where I always thought I was my thoughts. I always thought that was my inner self speaking to me, my thoughts. But the moment I realized that that's not true, right? Like a lot of thoughts I have are me just spiraling. There's another voice there. And so I am not at the point where you are. You said you're instantly there where you can recognize the voice that's coming up. I'm not quite there, but I am at a place now where I'm asking myself, is that just, my thoughts, my fears speaking, or is that my true self speaking? And that has been so unbelievably liberating. I hope that resonates with some listeners. I hope you all don't think I'm just some nutso, but
I think that if you think about it in practical terms, I say that our mind makes a really good CFO or COO. Like it's not, our minds are a beautiful thing. We just task it with the wrong things. So CFO, COO, they rabbit hole, they take care of a lot of things that are really important to take care of, but they cannot be CEOs because they don't have the overall vision. It is their job to rabbit hole and to figure things out and to be very rational about things and such and be worried and anxious and all of that. Great, okay, but you don't get to drive the bus. The CEO is in charge, and the CEO is our soul.
oh, I love that. I love that. Okay, but so I have to ask you then, this is where I get really tripped up. Is detoxing the heart. How do we heal our hearts?
By also not tasking it with what it's not supposed to be tasked with. So the heart, truly, I mean, you could talk to anyone and they will agree with you. All the heart wants is to be loved. All the heart wants is to be seen, to be acknowledged, to be cared for, and to be loved. So think of it, if you wanted your inner child, I call it your inner puppy, and it's also, as a child or a puppy would be, it's very fickle, right? It might want ice cream 1 hour, then it wants a nap, then it wants to be held, then it feels really good and wants to go and do jumping jacks, whatever it is. And great, again, don't let it drive the bus. Hold it, hug it, protect it, but don't task it with things that it cannot do. So, as you know, in the chapter, I talk a lot about being very intentional, not only feeling all the feels, which I go through, which are really important to do, but also being very intentional with the things that busy our lives and the people that are within it. Not everybody is our people. And yeah, I have this section about taser, shield, filter, or hug. And you have to figure out where each person in your life fits into. And truly, a excellent quick marker is, did this experience or did this person expand or contract my heart? And you will have the your answer instantly. And it's not so black and white, which is why I have the different categories for the people. But not everybody is your people, and your heart needs protection, and it is your responsibility to protect it. So much of the detox of the heart is about the protection, the seeing, the acknowledgement of our heart as unique from our brains and from our minds and from our soul. I mean, sorry, from our minds, our bodies, and our soul. And then just just knowing how to treat it and being really really kind to it.
Yeah. You make it sound so easy. I guess I would just say to all of that that that's what I'm working on, right? We're all working on things. I'm working on letting feelings, particularly not so desirable ones, not so socially desirable of ones, just move through me instead of pushing them away. That's just a personal aside there. But in your book, you also mentioned that we can really, reclaim our soul, um, it cultivate joy by doing a couple things, by being creative, by playing. I'd love to end our conversation with you talking about those ways and other ways in which we can not just reclaim our souls, but like live within the space that our unique imprint on the world has created.
Yeah. So the book is really, really intentionally structured, intentionally and chronologically. So if anybody chooses to read it, I really recommend that you do so chronologically and you don't skip. So the first half, as we've talked about, is all about decluttering mind, heart, and body. So you can get in touch with your soul. Then what do you do with it? So, chapter 4 is all about play. Chapter 5 is about finding your true north. And chapter 6, which is week 4, 5, and 6, is about writing or rewriting your story from the inside out rather than the world uh, being in charge. So, playing is a really, it's my week 4 is my favorite week because it's all about playing, and there is no better way than to set your soul free and let it lead than through playing. And they talk about the different there's 8 different personality types, and depending on your personality types, there's different ways of playing. Finding one's true north is really about connecting with our higher self. Our souls are very different than our higher self or spirit or universal consciousness, Jesus, Allah, whatever you want to call it. Our souls are uniquely ours. Spirit is what connects us all in the universe. So it's the dance between the soul and spirit. And week 5 is about writing your story, your manifesto, so to speak, from that space. And I literally have a Venn diagram that you follow in order to find your raison d'etre, your reason for living and to live from that space. So, so again, super, super practical uh, steps toward redefining, rewriting, and redesigning your life as you would like it from the inside out.
I love that distinction between living inside out versus outside in, because all the external messaging we're given tells us to live outside in. But what I love about our conversation today, Shirin, is you've given me both the enthusiasm and motivation to flip it, to live inside first, cultivate that, and then um, beacon it. I don't know if beacon's the right word, but then spread it to outside.
Because beacon actually also a beacon light guides others. So it's not just about you shining, but helping others. So I like beacon. I'm going to steal it and use it.
Well, tell us about your new book when it comes out. It's called Free to Be, a 6-week guide to reclaiming your soul. Tell us all the things.
Yes. So it is coming out June 20th. It is distributed with Simon & Schuster is distributing it. It will be on. It is already on multiple platforms. Amazon, Barnes and Noble are probably the easiest. It's available now for pre-order. So if you're moved to read it, please order now. Pre-sales count. And once it is out on June 20th, it will be in a lot of brick and mortar stores. I'm really pushing for independent bookstores because that's important to me. So hopefully you'll find it there. But right now it is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and a few other platforms.
Well, Shireen, I want to thank you for giving me your time and writing this book, putting it out into the world. It is truly a light for others. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on your show.